I think most early stage and aspiring creators and entrepreneurs are trying to solve the wrong problem. They think they need more confidence, more discipline, more motivation, more information. But I don't think that's the problem. I think the real problem is that they're trapped in a quiet act of obedience. Obedience to fear, obedience to self-doubt, obedience to other people's expectations, obedience to an old story about who they are and what they're capable of. And until they're willing to rebel against that story, nothing changes. For years, I thought there's something was wrong with me. I would get excited about a new idea, a new project, a new goal, a new vision for my life. And for a few days, sometimes even a few weeks, I was all in. Then the same thing would happen. I'd slow down, I'd overthink, I'd procrastinate, I'd lose momentum, and eventually I'd find myself right back where I started. Maybe you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know what you want, you know what you should be doing, you know the next step, but somehow you keep getting in your own way. In my personal creator journey, I finally realized that I kept getting stuck because I was fighting a psychological battle that I didn't fully understand. And once I understood that battle, everything began to change. At one point, I spent weeks creating an online course, recording lessons, building slides, putting everything together. The course was finished. All I had to do was to publish it. And I couldn't. The fear became so overwhelming that I deleted the entire thing. Weeks of work gone. And I remember sitting there thinking, I can't keep living like this. Enough is enough. And not because I suddenly became confident, not because I suddenly became fearless, but because I became so tired of letting fear make my decisions. That moment, which seemed kind of insignificant at the time, I later realized became a turning point in my creator journey. Things started to get better for me. So I retraced my steps, I reverse engineered what had happened, and I identified 3 important things that helped me break free. Hey there, if we haven't met yet, I'm Phillip and you're tuned into the Rebel Creator Sessions. And I'm really excited about today's session because I'm going to share with you a framework that has the potential to completely change your life as it has mine. And yes, I know everybody says that about whatever they are creating, but please hear me out, and you be the judge. And whether you agree with me or not, let me know in the comments. The framework I'm talking about is what I call the ACT framework. A stands for Awaken the Rebel, C stands for Challenge the Doubter, and T stands for Take Radical Action. It all begins with rebellion. Therefore, step 1 is Awaken the Rebel. Most people don't have an information problem. They have a courage problem. They already know what they should do. Start the YouTube channel, launch the business, write the book, apply for the opportunity, speak up, put themselves out there, but they don't. Why? Because part of them is still loyal to a fear-driven identity that no longer serves them. An identity that says, I'm not ready, I'm too shy, I'm not experienced enough, what if I fail? What will people think? And as long as that identity remains intact, it quietly pulls them back toward the familiar. This is why so many people stay stuck for years. Not because they can't change, but because they haven't reached the point where staying the same becomes more painful than changing. One of my favorite ideas comes from the philosopher Albert Camus. Camus believed that rebellion begins with a simple word, no. Not violence, not anger, not breaking rules, a refusal. A refusal to continue accepting something that no longer feels true. And I think that's exactly where transformation begins. At some point, every creator reaches a crossroads. You can continue obeying fear, continue postponing your dreams, continue waiting for confidence, continue telling yourself that someday you'll start. Or you can say no. No, I'm not going to spend the next 10 years wondering what might have happened. No, I'm not going to let fear make every important decision. No, I'm not going to abandon my ambitions simply because they're uncomfortable. That's the rebellion I'm talking about. And that's why I believe all meaningful change begins with rebellion. Because before you can become someone new, You have to stop defending the version of you that's been keeping you stuck. I call this awakening the rebel. Now, the rebel isn't the loudest part of you. The rebel is the most honest part of you. The part that says there has to be more than this. The part that refuses to settle. The part that chooses possibility over comfort. The part that refuses to let fear decide the direction of your life. But rebellion alone isn't enough, because the moment you decide to change your life, something interesting happens. The resistance gets louder. The moment you step outside of your comfort zone, another character enters the story. I call this character the doubter, and understanding the doubter completely changed how I view fear, which brings us to step 2 of the ACT framework, which is challenge the doubter. Most people get blindsided at this stage. They make a decision, they feel inspired, they feel motivated, they commit to change, and then suddenly the voice appears. Who do you think you are? What if you fail? What if people judge you? What if you're embarrassing yourself? What if you're not good enough? Most people interpret these thoughts as a sign that they should stop. I used to do the same, but I've come to see them differently. In fact, I think one of the biggest lies we believe is this: fear means stop. It doesn't, Fear only means that you've finally entered territory that matters. Think about the first time you posted online, the first time you spoke in front of a group, the first time you charged money for your work, the first time you shared an opinion that you genuinely cared about. Of course, fear showed up. Why wouldn't it? From a psychological perspective, this actually makes perfect sense. Your brain evolved to keep you alive, not to help you build a personal brand, launch a business, start a YouTube channel, or pursue an unconventional dream. For most of human history, belonging to a group was essential for survival. Being rejected by the tribe carried real consequences. So when you put yourself out there today, your nervous system often reacts as if something important is at stake. That's why criticism feels personal. That's why visibility feels dangerous. That's why fear of judgment can feel so overwhelming. Your brain isn't trying to sabotage your dreams. It's trying to protect you. And the problem is that the same system designed to keep you safe can also keep you small. And that's why understanding the doubter is so important. Because once you understand what's actually happening, everything changes. You stop treating fear like a prophecy and you start treating it like a protective response. You stop asking, what does this fear mean? And start asking, what is this fear trying to protect me from? That's a completely different conversation. Fear stops being the enemy. Fear simply becomes information, a signal, a reminder that you're doing something that matters. The doubter will never disappear, but it loses its authority. And that's when something interesting happens. You stop waiting for fear to leave and you start moving forward anyway. But understanding fear is not enough. Awareness alone doesn't change your life. You can understand your psychology, you can understand your habits, you can understand your patterns and still remain stuck. Because eventually there comes a point where understanding must become action, which takes us to step 3 of the ACT framework: take radical action. I think confidence is one of the biggest misconceptions in personal development. Most people believe that the sequence looks like this: confidence, then action, then results. But that's not how it worked for me. And that's not how it works for most people. The real sequence looks like this: action, then evidence, then confidence. Think about it. Where does confidence actually come from? From evidence. You become confident speaking because you've spoken. You become confident creating because you've created. You become confident on camera because you've spent time on camera. Confidence isn't built through thinking. It's built through evidence. And evidence is created through action. And this is where so many people get trapped. They wait, they prepare, they research, they consume, they watch another video, read another book, take another course, and all while avoiding the one thing that actually creates change. Action. Not perfect action, not fearless action, but messy action, uncomfortable action, consistent action. You know, this is why action is so powerful. It doesn't just change your results, it changes your identity. Every action sends a message to your brain. I can do hard things. I can survive discomfort. Some people spend years preparing for a life they never actually start living. Don't let that be you. In psychology, there's a concept called self-perception. The basic idea is that we learn who we are by observing our own behavior. Your brain pays attention to what you repeatedly do. If you repeatedly avoid difficult things, your brain starts constructing an identity around avoidance. But when you repeatedly take courageous action, even small actions, your brain begins collecting a different kind of evidence. Evidence that says, I'm someone who follows through. I'm someone who can handle discomfort. I'm someone who keeps showing up. I'm someone who acts despite fear. I can keep going, and over time those messages become beliefs, and those beliefs become identity. Action fundamentally changes how you see yourself. And once your identity starts changing, everything else becomes easier. So there you have it, the ACT framework. Awaken the rebel, challenge the doubter, take radical action. The reason this framework works is because it addresses the entire psychological journey of transformation. All three steps support one another. Awaken the rebel creates the desire for change. Challenge the doubter helps you understand resistance. Take radical action creates the evidence that transforms identity. And evidence is ultimately what changes how you see yourself. If there's one thing, just one thing I hope you take away from this video, it is this. You do not need confidence before you begin. You do not need permission. You do not need to feel ready. You simply need to take the next step. The shy creator becomes confident by creating. The hesitant creator becomes courageous by acting. The person you want to become is built through repeated acts of courage. One decision, one post, one video, one uncomfortable action at a time. Rebellion gives you the courage to begin. Understanding the doubter helps you navigate resistance. And radical action creates the evidence that transforms identity. And when those three forces start working together, something powerful happens. You stop trying to become a creator and you start seeing yourself as one. So, awaken the rebel, challenge the doubter, take radical action, and create anyway. If all of this is resonating with you, I've created a free mini course consisting of 3 videos and a workbook with worksheets where I take you step by step through the ACT framework. It's not a lot of information, it's more action orientated, and I think you're gonna love it. You can get it for free. I will leave a link to it in the description below. And don't forget, the life you want is on the other side of the actions that you're avoiding. The creator you want to become is built one act of courage at a time. In the comments below, let me know what is one disempowering story that your inner doubter keeps telling you. I'd love to connect with you there. If you feel you've got value from this video, don't forget to subscribe, share the video with somebody who may benefit from it, and I'll see you in the next session. Cheers.